Hello, everybody. It is time for Wacky Wednesday. And I am Michael Curtis. And with me, of course, is.
Brendan LaSalle at your service.
And this is What's Happening? No, this is Who Keep Crawling? What the hell? Keep Crawling with
Keep
Mike and Brendan.
crawling.
Thank you very much. Here we are here. So if you all would give us a very happy shout out, make sure that our volume is working. You can all hear what's going on as usual. We would appreciate that. So
Absolutely.
we hope that in about 30 seconds, we hope somebody will say, yes, everything is doing good. Can hear both of you. It looks good. Sounds good. Thank you, Judge Christian. All right, we're doing good. All right. So
Fantastic.
it is Wednesday night, and that means it is time for Keep Crawling with Mike and Brendan, the show that, if Twitch shows were television, were science fiction series, we would be William Shatner's Tech War. I'm sorry, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I
Ooh.
know.
I don't know. You see, I would argue that we would be like Space 1999, right? Except we also have that wiki robot, wiki, that guy. You know what I mean? We'd be like that. You know what
Are you,
I'm saying?
do you mean Tweaky? Do you mean
Tweaky,
Tweaky
yeah.
from
Tweaky.
Buck Rogers from a completely other show? Is that what's going on
Space
here?
1999 plus Tweaky. I'm telling
Oh
you, that's
man.
us. Boom, right there.
We're losing all sorts of geek credit there by by conflating Buck Rogers of the 25th century and, of course, Space 1999. So,
Nah, look.
all right. Well, thank you very much, Hectophonic. Thinking we sound sexy as always. Thank you very much. You know what? I tell you. Oh, Brendan, it is Wednesday, and you know
Yes,
what?
sir.
We have a packed show tonight. We have a
Oh my God.
whole bunch of people coming on to talk about stuff. But before we get there, what's up, man? How happy belated 4th of July? I mean,
Happy belated fourth, sir.
I know we exchanged texts over it. So
We did indeed. Yeah, I was celebrating. I got my first ever barbecue grill over this Fourth of July, and I held my first ever. Like I've been to Fourth of July barbecues, and I've actually had them in my house before, but this is the first time I cooked, and was pretty excited about all that. So
all right, man.
yeah, man, it was good times.
What,
You can't picture me with a grill and a thing, but I was doing it. I was like, this is
what'd you
chicken
cook?
legs. I made barbecue chicken legs, and I made burgers, and then we did a bunch of sides: green beans, potato salad. It was just scratch baked beans.
Judge Christian's ahead of me. What kind of barbecue? All
Now,
right.
Judge, so I got an early Christmas or early birthday present. I got a big green egg, which was pretty exciting. So I'm ready. Anyone wants to come over for Thanksgiving? I'm smoking a turkey. Start at like noon the day before. I know, right? Yeah. I went from 0 to 160, y'all, overnight. I know, right? My
Is
mother-in-law
that
just
legal in
added on
Georgia?
to this. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, Ground Keeling Man's got pulled pork going right now. Outstanding.
Oh, all right. What's your barbecue sauce secret?
Let my wife tell me what to put in it and what to leave out. Those songs.
Smart
So
man.
far.
That's it.
Yeah. I'm gonna start tinkering soon. I'm gonna start but right now, that day of, I said, sweetie, you tell me. So
All
yeah,
right.
man.
Oh, all right. So, I did not get any gaming in. Did you manage to get some gaming done this week?
Why I in fact did. I ran 2 games of Dying Earth. I ran my normal Sunday, and I played in. Are you ready for this? I played for the first time. I went through acting up in Lankmar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mighty Judge Bruce ran that for me and some other luminaries, good fellows, all, and some of his buds from the UK and some folks from California. And wow, what a great we had a hilarious time. It's fantastic, man.
Who ended up getting dragged on stage?
I was one of them. It was me and one of my buddies. I was like the warrior. And, like I had this whole like character plotted out, and then I get my pre-gen, and I got a 6 intelligence, and you have to roll with that, you know. So I kind of played him like this very excited like kid almost, like I get to be on stage, you know. So I laughed at all the wrong times, and I had fun. But the jar trick. I'm like, can I get a mighty D to make that look incredible? And I pulled it off. So we moved the thing one over on the list on the house thing because I karate sworded this thing off dude's head. It was really fun then. I had a great time.
Excellent. It's
Yeah,
one
hilarious.
of my favorite ones that I have done. So no.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everybody's doing good out there tonight. I'm glad, as always, we're glad we could spend some time with us here tonight. So, as you may have heard, there's a little something which is kind of going on lately here in the Goodman Games DCC Hemisphere universe. Little thing called Dying Earth. And with us tonight, we have two special people we're going to bring on about now, as soon as I can remember how to bring them back online. We've got coming in with us.
Who's that? What's that?
Hey! Mr. Marc Bruner, Mr. Julian Bernick. How are you doing, gentlemen? Welcome.
Well, thank you.
We're very happy that you come on our little dog and pony show. And despite what everybody has heard, they are not contractually obligated to appear. They actually agreed to come on their own free will. It wasn't like Joe made them.
I still found green M&Ms in my little jar over here. I explicitly wanted those picked out, Brendan, next time.
I will get Trevor on that right away. I am so sorry. Oh my God.
But apparently, if you say the words "Dying Earth," I might just show up at an end to it. So,
look into a mirror, say it 3 times.
Yeah.
That thing. That thing. That thing.
That used to be my theory about poor, God rest his soul, Bill Paxton. Because Bill Paxton was in so many movies. I just assumed, like, if you just started shooting a movie in Hollywood, there was a chance just Bill Paxton would appear and be in your movie. Like you didn't have an actual agent. It was just like, he could sense a camera. So, all right. All right. Well, we are very thankful, as I said, very thankful for you guys to come on and talk about Dying Earth for a little bit. So, we'll start things pretty simple. So, for the one person who has yet to hear about what exactly is Dying Earth, why don't you give that person and anybody else who's hanging around the chat room or watching this later the lowdown? What's going on with Dying Earth? This sounds pretty depressing.
Well, yeah. So the Dying Earth is a set of novels that was written by Jack Vance, who's an author who, obviously kind of the core of a lot of the fantasy gaming, back in the 60s and 70s, and he wrote this setting that takes place at the end of time, essentially, the end of the Earth's lifespan, right? Where, the sun is no longer, it's sort of blazing yellow. It's this kind of wane, weak red that sort of, has these, fits where it, almost like colic fits that, may extinguish itself at any moment. And there's always this sort of like weariness with, the whole history of the Earth is behind the last inhabitants who reside here, and part of that is just it surrounds them, right? The sort of ancient Earth has been molded by its history, where thousands of kingdoms have risen and fallen. There's sort of like a decaying grandeur to the stories and some of the themes. There's also just kind of a sense of what are the inhabitants of this kind of strange world like? At the end of time, some of them are curious, some of them are depressed. Some of them have developed like strange cults and religions and sort of like trying to revive the sun or you do whatever they can to like sort of make their way in this setting. And so it's a fun sort of playful playscape for role playing, particularly because the idea that you can have any number of sort of things that have happened before, and that could be something that you bring to your adventures in the setting. It can also just be that this is a kind of the ultimate sandbox. You are in this kind of world that's sparsely inhabited. You have an opportunity to kind of introduce any types of creatures and inhabitants, because if it's been in history, obviously it can be part of the current setting. And Jack Vance does a good job of sort of he doesn't provide a lot of like heavy details for the setting. What he's doing is a lot of like scenes and traveling from place to place and sort of giving you, snapshots of what, the different characters encounter. So I think it's a really neat, it's obviously kind of inspired both by works that have come before it in the sci-fi and in fantasy, but also inspired a whole host of like, post-apocalyptic sort of, novels and themes that come afterwards as well. In addition to a lot of the work that Gary Gygax took from it and imbued into the original Dungeons and Dragons.
Of course, that's of course where we get the fancy and magic system that was so nice. Now remind me how many of Vance's Dying, how many stories did he do, set in there?
Yeah, there's essentially like 4 novels that are a collection of, each of them have a collection of stories that were published, you know, a variety of formats. There's the Dying Earth novels, which are four short stories, I think. Is that right? Yeah, 4 short stories that are, you know, kind of, no more than that. I'm sorry. There's a few more, you know, that kind of comprise the original ones that were written in the 60s. Then there's the 2 novels that are about Kugel and his adventures, you know, that are kind of along the same themes, you know, this traveling adventurer who gets into these kind of oddball encounters that he sort of is up and down on his luck, right? And there's 2 books there, and then there's the later books, the Magician's books, which are the Rialto the Marvelous, and they're sort of exploring this idea of what happens when magicians who can live for millions of years, what happens to them in this setting, and how does magic work in that context?
Right. Okay.
I got a question from the chat I'd like to pose. This one from Mr. Brad K. McDevitt. Perhaps we've heard of him. He says, how would it be different from Dancers at the End of Time?
It's an interesting question. It's been a long time since I read that series by Mr. Moorcock. It has some of those themes of like very far future and sort of technologies become so accelerated and advanced that it's essentially magic. The tone is a lot different, if I recall correctly. The Dancers is kind of playful and satirical, a little more, I want to say a little lighter, although it's been so long. And Vance is a little slower. His prose is pretty stylized, very stylized language-wise, unlike most of what Mr. Moorcock has done, probably. And I'd say the characters in Vance, of course, often are kind of over-civilized and under-moralized, whereas in Dancers at the End of the Time, if I remember correctly, they were kind of amoral, and they were almost so innocent that they'd sort of lost touch with morality, if I recall. Not entirely in a sinister way, but in just this sort of having godlike power kind of way. But if somebody's read Dancers of Time more recently than like 12 years ago, then you can feel free to correct me, because it was a while back.
Right. So now, obviously, because Julian, you bring up the fact that you remember Dancers being a little bit more satirical, a little bit more humorous and everything. And I mean, if you're coming into, like, for example, things have been a lot very interesting the last year and a half here. So one must say is like, do I really want to play a game called Dying Earth? I mean, it's like and I mean, you could imagine that being very grim dark. But now it's been a while since I read the stories myself, but I don't remember them being like necessarily like yes, it's the end of it's the end of the world basically, but it's not happening tomorrow. But there is still, and especially with the character Kugel, there's definitely a lot of humor and things that aren't quite going right and everything. Is that, am I remembering correctly? I mean,
oh no, certainly there's especially the Kugel stories are very funny sometimes. They're very dark and very funny at the same time, which is why I like them so much. I mean, you find yourself laughing at Kugel in his various turns of fortune, and very bad stuff sometimes happens to him. He's no saint. He's not necessarily at all somebody you feel real sorry for, because he does bad stuff. And so it's it has sometimes a little bit of a Lankmar vibe in terms of the reverses of fortune that the hero goes through, or I don't even want to really call him the hero, but the sort of protagonist or the central character in those 2 books. But he's much less of a sympathetic character. I mean, a very interesting character and fun to follow and read about. And some of them are extremely funny, and Vance can be super funny. It's funny to think of them as apocalyptic, because it's not, it's totally there, but it's not really the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of the Dying Earth. In spite of, I'm so close to it at this point, I forget that you even sort of put that lens on it. When you're reading it, there's these beautiful descriptions of the bloated red sun and all that stuff, and you visualize it and stuff. but it's not like Mad Max or something. It's really it's more that they're at the very. It's almost that civilization has played itself out, and this is what we've come to.
Right. I had the impression that it's less of like things are coming to a climactic conclusion, that things are like winding down. Like, so, it's not, it's like, as I said, it's not happening tomorrow. It's not happening in a flash of, nuclear fire. It's just like, we had a good run. It's like, Oh, I have had a little experience doing this of taking the existing DCC rules and then having to kind of like play with them to make them, kind of fit the genre, fit the specific works that we're dealing with here. And I think I had a little bit easier time, despite the fact that I had a boatload more of like, background material I had to deal with. It was just like, that's pretty much already there. Let's just twiddle these knobs a little bit and huzzah, Lankmar. But, I'm sensing that wasn't quite the same experience.
Yeah, I think we took a slightly different approach, because a lot of my experience when reading Vance was this sort of, my natural instincts was begin cataloging things, and Vance is like this author that really lends himself towards, my natural instincts, like I said, of like keeping these lists and these ongoing sort of like, compendiums of ideas and creations that he throws out there, which is, it's a different sort of authorship than I think the Lankmar books, but because a lot of it, that we used as a starting point for, creating setting was taking some of these elements and then sort of using our imagination to say, what is that interpretation of this thing? Because it's not really detailed in the book in many cases. It's just kind of like a throwaway line. There may be a reference to like, a keek, and, it's up to us as sort of, to kind of use our imaginations in a certain context and bring the voice of the dying earth to our descriptions and to some of those things while giving it the, overlaying the DCC rules. The other aspects that I think maybe a little differ is that, one of the things that we really tried to focus a lot of attention on with the Dying Earth setting, at least, was making the character classes themselves very representative of the novels, right? So there's there's shades of all the kind of major protagonists in the Dying Earth represented in the character classes, and that was what we tried to do, at least part of my intention at least, was saying by playing these classes you have an opportunity to really sort of create the setting, through the mechanics that we're creating for these character classes themselves, even though they're obviously based on, the core DCC, framework, right? That's common to all the character classes.
I see. Go, Brendan.
A question from the chat. Do curses cancel out in DCC Dying Earth, like when Cudgel was cursed with endless misery and a swift death at the same time? So we figured it'd be fine.
We didn't explicitly build that into the curse mechanic, because one of the things that we wanted to do was inherit, the work that's been done in curses, not only in the DCC core book, but also in settings like you created, Michael, for Shutter Mountains, where there's, this kind of, curse mechanic that's, that's similar to ones for the DCC world. However, there is this idea of like equipoise, right? Or this sort of like, a balance between actions, and that's built into some of our mechanics. And so that a lot of the ideas in the books are, obviously, you take one action, but there's a consequence, right? And that's a lot of the Kugel stories are very much in that vein of, he's trying to get one off on somebody, but it turns out he's, the rug is pulled out from under him, and he's sort of stripped of all whatever wealth or things that he thought he was going to be able to do. And so that's kind of a mechanic we try to build into some of the character classes specifically, the Wayfarer, where the luck mechanic is kind of, built into that class, where luck can be both given and taken away from that class at the cost of, the rest of the party, or the cost of the Wayfarer himself. And so the curse mechanic, it's, what we did was extend and expand, the curses, because we wanted that to be a core part of what the witch class could do. There's not really a character class that uses curses in DCC, but we thought that'd be kind of fun to have the character class that uses curses as part of its spellcasting ability. The idea of canceling out curses is a fun one, certainly, but I think that's sort of like a unique instance in the book that has a lot of humor. We didn't want to make that like a core element of a mechanic in the gameplay, but as a judge, that would be an excellent thing to throw on your players. Like, the counter curses, that it could be canceled out with each other.
There's having gone through this, there's certain things where you're just like, is this something we really need a mechanic for, or is this something which is more like a story element that
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh god, there's another 4,000 words if I have to go in and just kind of like how curses counteract each other.
But you could
layer of complication that we don't.
You could have a curse duel, actually.
I smell stretch goal. No.
We have a 3-page table. It's great.
So you were mentioning like the curse mechanic. So like if you could pick like 2 or 3 mechanics from DCC that sets it kind of apart from core DCC, like if I had to like what about Lankmar makes it different from DCC, I would say something like the fleeting luck mechanic and like lack of clerics or luck for healing or something like that. Those are like the 2 kind of like iconic things in there. Can you guys think of like something equivalent for Dying Earth? I mean,
certainly. I mean, we've already touched on the classes, but since so much of DCC's coolest mechanics are really class-based, Mighty Deeds and the DCC magic system, both for clerics and magic users and so forth. The classes, of course, in Dying Earth are totally different and unique. And, there's the Wayfarer and the Magician, the Rialto template, and the Witch, as we touched on, and the vat thing, the artificial person that's grown, like the Tissace and Tissane in the first stories in the Dying Earth book. And I mean, it's an entirely different way. I mean, not 100%, but it's a pretty different way to play DCC. To have different classes really changes I think the play experience. And then the core of of saving throws and combat and so on it works the same, but the class rules are really different and is what it makes a lot of fun. I think Marc particularly, but we all teamed up and have been through a lot of lots and lots and lots of spilled bites on trying to fine tune stuff and tweak stuff, and we really tried to hone in on those.
Mm-hmm. I have to throw in I've played a few times, and the mechanic that me and the other demo people were super excited about is the Grudge Tokens. That's a really nice, it's almost like an inversion of Fleeting Luck. We really enjoyed using that and bringing that into the game. It's a kind of a thing that new players who are new to DCC will often ask, hey, can I spend luck so that he misses me instead of hits me? And well, we've finally gotten here for all of you who are interested in a mechanic like that.
Yeah, and I like that mechanic in particular because it's familiar from the point of view. If you played Lankmar, you're obviously familiar with sort of like this additional luck mechanic, and taking a look at that and saying, oh, how could we thematically apply that to Dying Earth? It's really about this this resentment that builds up rather than sort of your own sort of prowess or luck building up. It's like your resentment, you're sort of holding on to that, and you spend that to cause other people to fail at things, right? So that's sort of like kind of the taking the thematic approach to the novel for that mechanic, which we included as an optional rule because it's one of these things that your particular play style may not want to have that sort of counter conflicts among party members, but you can also spend it on the judges' roles, right? So that being the fun element for a lot of players is just, hey, I want a second chance at this, and my built-up resentment is sort of the mechanic for that. I would say that some of the other things that are not really character class based, but that what we're trying to do is and particularly when we were writing The Dying Earth, is saying, there's a lot of kind of cool things in DCC that are left kind of unexplained, right? Which I think is great because it allows a lot of judges leeway and players leeway, especially around like, magic item creation or the idea of like, where does magic come from? Some of the things that we wanted to include just because we thought this was the appropriate place, since this is a very magic focused supplement or setting, is things dealing with like, unique artifacts. So there's, kind of like going back to my original days of, learning D&D, is a lot of it was looking at the magic or the DM guide and looking at all the magic items, right? And sort of perusing that and saying, well, that's my wish list of things that I hope to encounter as a character, or a player someday. Well, we have like a selection of artifacts that are lifted from the Dying Earth novels. And that's something that I think is kind of fun because, we took our own spin on it. There's this idea that it's not just something you can use and there's no consequence. Every artifact has its sort of pluses and downsides, right? There's always some, risk to using something, and that's very thematic to the books as well. The other thing that I kind of wanted to highlight, just because I think it's an extension again of DCC, not necessarily something we found in the books, but it was kind of appropriate because of the magic system is the idea of quest for it is this great thing in DCC. I love that idea of like you want to create a magic ring, you go you quest for it, or you want to find a spell, you go quest for it. Well, we kind of put in a rule system in place for spell creation, like creating your own versions of your own imprint on a spell. So that's kind of a fun, sort of like I said, a natural extension to the magic system that's in the vein of Dying Earth, because so much of this is about who was the creator of the spell. It traces pedigree all the way back to Vandal the Great or whatever it is, and sort of taking that concept and saying, what if I was a powerful wizard that and I want to create my own spell, and what does that process look like? So that's kind of a neat mechanic that we it's not something you have to use explicitly, but it's something there for judges to use. When their players get to that point of saying, hey, magic is fun, I want to create my own sort of version of something.
No, here's an interesting. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not an interesting question. Is there like a level limit that you have to be before you can create your own spell?
Yeah, I think, and I have to go back to it's been a while since I edited or read that section. I don't know if we put. I have to get back to you, Mike. That's been an area because a lot of our playtests have been focused on, obviously character classes and sort of the core mechanics. That mechanic being much more of a campaign level, right? Sort of longer term, where we've had some versions of that, but we haven't done a lot of like focused. Every playtest is not going to encounter that, right? Just in terms of how often those rules come up.
Okay. Now, because we've talked a lot about how Dying Earth has these new classes, these new specialized classes. I kind of know the feeling. I didn't quite have to go that route when I was doing Lankmar. In fact, if anything, I didn't have to create any characters. I had to throw a bunch of them out. So have you guys have you made similar kind of allowances when you were doing like if you're playing Dying Earth, you have to play like the new classes? I mean, or if like Joe really loves playing his elf, can he play an elf in Dying World? How do you guys end up handling that?
Yeah, we ended up handling it by sort of giving guidance to the judges, because one thing this is intended to be a toolkit as an option for judges. Obviously, they could take some of these elements and put it into their own non-Dying Earth setting if they like some of the mechanics. But also if they're, similar, DCC, a lot of DCC in my experience is about sort of, traveling to unexpected places. So maybe your set of adventures are suddenly thrust into, the world of Dying Earth and you want to play there. So we do have some guidance, in particular, because the Dying Earth novels are sort of similar to Langmar, and there's not really any sort of real religion left, right? All religions are sort of like fake, or in a sense, right? They're all sort of construed, but they're equally ineffectual, right? In terms of like, what powers they have, because a lot of the gods that, these religions may have, gotten their powers from may be dead or sleeping, or they're just tired and they don't answer the calls. So clerics are not really something that is a big sort of class. So there's, certainly guidance to judges saying that if you're playing with clerics, here are some things you want to consider, and there's also some tables we put in to say, if you're a cleric, what happened to your god, sort of thing, your god may not respond and may be harder to reach, or maybe, those kind of things. But, there's also some things like the magician class in particular is like a different way of spellcasting. It's a character class that's very focused on sort of rote magic, memorization, sort of exactitude about learning one way to prepare a spell, and if they get us outside of those bounds, they're sort of lost, right? They don't really have an understanding of magic. The wizard is much different. They're much more about sort of focusing controlling the chaos all around them. And so one of the things is, if you're playing a wizard in DCC Dying Earth, what are some of the the things that you could change to make it a little bit more amplified, in terms of like the differences. And so there's guidance like that in there as well. So there, we did put some sections in the books about playing, with existing character classes, some guidance about, what character classes are appropriate. The non-human character classes, there's no elves, halflings, or dwarves, but it's not to say that there couldn't certainly be like a a type of creature that exists in the world that's exceptionally lucky, right? Or there's a type of ground dwelling race that is really good at smelling tear season golden symptoms.
Right.
You could sort of layer that in, but it's not explicitly something we say don't do. It's just it's there for the judges to interpret.
Okay, all right. It's because obviously when we set out to design Lankmar, it was like, okay, we have 3 settings. We have kind of like the default DCC setting, anything from DCC works, and then there was the other thing is you could just steal stuff from Lankmar and use it in your other game. You don't even have to play Lankmar. And then of course was the what we call the literary setting, where everything was just like you could play one of 3 character classes, and there were no clerics and all the rest of that stuff. So. I'm always interested to see, how, because the DCC rules, Joe designed them as like, it's drawing influences from like all around Appendix N. So everything is in that DNA, and it's just a matter of getting in there and like monkeying around with it, just like, okay, like amplify this strand of DNA and turn this strand down, and hopefully when all is said and done, you're like, hey, I have a setting here that works, So.
Well, I think Dying Earth is different in a lot of ways, because you can encounter so much variation depending on what part of the world you are, and the world is not described in detail, but you have magic cars, in like one of the novels, that represents sort of like people found technology, sort of like an MCC universe. You certainly have like the historic, there's a lot of references to the dead gods and those kind of settings and religions, and so I think the Dying Earth setting is open to finding or discovering things that are very representative of like a traditional fantasy setting, a science future setting, or even like sort of like the Dying Earth novels themselves, where they're traveling between these places and kind of encountering it all across the spectrum of of the campaign that you might be running.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. Everybody is, people who are new to DCC are always like, what's like the DCC, what's like the campaign world, it's like, and they're always looking around for it and like asking, oh, can I get like DCC, what's like 35 or whatever it was, like the gazetteer of everything. It's like, no, the secret is the DCC world is all of them. it's like we're slowly building it one supplement at a time. It's just like, just throw a magical portal or a space pterodactyl in there, and next thing you know, it's like, you're going from one place to the other. So that's all that matters. So.
Ever magic gets weird, we will be there.
I mean, in the later novels, the magicians are traveling between worlds. It's very DCC in that sense. It's like you can that's built into the setting,
and times as well.
And time travel, and that being a big element to it.
Yeah, very much.
So have you guys, because I've been watching on social media, have you guys contacted the Vance estate, and you're getting percentage about the bump now on Dying Earth books which are currently being sold? Because it seems everybody is getting their Tales of the Dying Earth now in preparation to play DCC Dying Earth in a year and a half or whenever it's scheduled to come out again. But I'm sure some of these people have already read Dying Earth, or they're rereading it again for the 3rd time or whatever, like that. Which brings us to one of the things that Brendan and I like to talk about on this show: other media, or at least not the direct media and everything like that. So obviously you guys have delved deep into all, and I say this with a little bit of jealousy, 4 stories that are in the Dying Earth. Although a couple of them were novels. All right, I'll give you that. Everything. So if people are coming new to Dying Earth, and aside from like the Vance stories themselves, do you guys have recommendations, like stuff that they might want to take a look at since they got some time, before the Kickstarter fulfills, to kind of try to get a feeling of of what Dying Earth is, or what kind of stories you could tell with it?
You want to take this one, Julian, first?
I was puzzling over that, and there's not, unlike, say, hey, if we were talking about a Robert Howard Kickstarter, we know exactly what media we'd be talking about. We'd just be saying comics versus movies versus what, right? And which is great. And I'd be like, well, King Kull was better. But anyway, the thing is that nobody's ever made a Dying Earth movie or even a comic book, I don't think. It's rare, it's very rarefied, and I think people are put off by how difficult it would be to get the tone right, and the Vancian language and the craziness of the setting, like, oh, here's flying cars and stuff over here, but here's witches' Sabbaths over here and stuff, and they're only 20 pages apart in that first little book. There's not much separating them. But I think, as I was talking before a little about the sort of the attitude of Dying Earth, to me, it's not about the genre or the setting as much as maybe the attitude towards civilization and morality and so on. And I was thinking more along the lines of, say, Maltese Falcon or the Long Goodbye, which is the other Marlowe movie that Robert Altman made in the 70s with Elliot Gould. Like, that shifting alliances and double crossing. I mean, especially the Maltese Falcon, where Peter Lorre and Bogart and what's her name and the fat guy, whatever. They're all just making deals and alliances, even in the same room together on the turn of a pin. And to me, that's like the ultimate expression of those Kugel stories, where fortunes reverse and shift back and forth very quickly. And I'd say this setting could be, is so broad that it's more, a lot of it can be more about that kind of attitude. The other thing that puts me in mind of is like an old Smollett novel I read, Tobias Smollett, a long time ago, which is a picaresque adventure where he has a roguish character who's out doing bad stuff and has a lot of adventures with police and getting out card sharped by other card sharps and all that stuff. It's Ferdinand Count Fathom is the name of it. And I don't know that Vance read that stuff, but is written a few centuries before him. But, to me, he pulls directly out of that tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's rather insightful. I hadn't thought of like the noir aspect of it, but you're right. It's very much. I was thinking more along the lines of like more of kind of like the modern noir things of like or is it like The Usual Suspects or something like where you have people with like shifting alliances. That's much more. But you're right. The noir is perfect for that. Especially because.
I mean, even maybe, well, Tarantino, I would say, could kind of fit, but he's. There's the whole Jack Vance thing about revenge, and it's not so much in Dying Earth. It's more in like the Demon Princes and the other Vance stuff. Although the Kugel thing with Ayakanu is definitely turns into a Vancian revenge story, right, in the third book. But yeah, certainly The Usual Suspects would be an interesting one. Actually, that might be a really nice model for an adventure, for a Dying Earth adventure. All these rogues kind of...
Not it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of digging it.
That's a free one. I'll give that out to the universe.
Yeah. I might be a little overcommitted already, so we'll just let that one linger for a minute. But good thought.
How about you, Marc? You got anything?
I'd say that if people have read Dying Earth and they're kind of looking for extensions, obviously Jack Vance's other works, that are non-Dying Earth are sort of more of that author's tone. There was a series of short stories released in, I think, late or early 2000s called Songs of the Dying Earth, which is a compilation of different authors, set in that setting. So if people are looking for, sort of like more works that are in that setting, but from, a variety of authors, I'd recommend that. I think it's a good book. When I was reading Dying Earth, I think a lot more what people typically think of as the intersections are more on the science intersection, like the far future science, or that's typically what like post-apocalyptic is, without getting I would say not necessarily the tone, but you could certainly, take elements of, I would say one book that comes to mind is like The Canticle for Leibowitz, which is a Walter book, which I adore that book a lot. And I think it's kind of similar in tone, but it's also one of these kind of like, there is a sense of isolation in that world, that's presented in the novels. There's a sense of like, unknown about the past, unknown about the future. And so I think that's like kind of like a literary extension. That's probably good. I think a lot of, honestly, like the melancholy, and if you're looking for just sort of not the humor, but the melancholy, a lot of Clark Ashton Smith is sort of resonant with me. That's like another sort of, and that's a precursor, obviously, to to Jack Vance and probably an influencer as well.
Right.
If you're looking for media, again, probably more the science post-apocalyptic, but the Wizards, the movie from like the 70s, that's similar Vancian, in the sense of magic and science and dueling, wizards at the end. That's always one that also comes up in conversation about MCC, as well. But I kind of agree with Julian. There's not like a lot of like other media that's like a direct, child of this, other than sort of like the literary works that have kind of collected in this space as well.
So you're saying like Hell Comes to Frogtown is not a good match, you don't want to. When you mentioned Clark Ashton Smith, of course, and what I would suggest is like actually, I think Clark Ashton Smith is actually once removed, because I think Clark Ashton Smith took a lot of inspiration from William Hope Hodgson's The Nightlands. And so I would recommend, like, if somebody wants to kind of get that film, The Nightlands is definitely worth checking out, because what is Smith's Zothic? Is that the one?
Zothic, yeah.
Is that the one that's it's the end of the world? It's everything is running down. Yeah. And I know a lot of people, and this isn't a perfect match, but one of the things that I always get about whenever I think about like a world that is kind of ending in a slow kind of apocalypse, everything, I think of, and this could be a touched over, this could be controversial to people, but Stephen King's The Gunslinger stories. Because there was an element of that, is that it's not apocalyptic, but like there's always the phrase that the world has moved on, and so I gonna get that feel.
Yeah, maybe the last 30 seconds of John Carpenter's The Thing is another one you could watch.
Oh.
How about music, guys? What would be the soundtrack to The Dying Earth?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know, like, if there's been anything that I would say is like really hits that sort of theme for me from the music dials too, at least. The Dead Man. I see some chat. The Dead Man soundtrack. Yeah. That's kind of that's kind of a movie that has a lot of like similar sort of
Hawkwind. I was gonna say Hawkwind. Tony, wait to be Tony.
Well, here's a question. Was there, when you were writing, was there anything you were listening to when you were writing?
Gosh, I was probably listening to. It was written over. The secret behind the curtain, Mike, and I think you had this before too, is that most of this material was written 2 years ago, and so it's been a while since we were in that phase of writing. I don't know, Julian, was there anything that you were listening to when you were writing?
Oh gosh, it's been so long, and also the adventure got written and then edited 1 year, and then edited again 1 year, and edited again 1 year. So yeah, gosh, I would say off the cuff, I'm not going to answer that because I just can't. I couldn't even begin to remember. But I would say, Vance was a musician, loved music, had all kinds of weird stringed instruments, and was real into. Music is a big part of the alien cultures in a lot of his books. I can't think of Dying Earth where it's a big deal, but in Demon Princes, and I was just reading one of the Alistair books. I would say, probably something kind of acoustic but discordant at the same time. Maybe like the Zither soundtrack in The Third Man. It's super. It's kind of discordant, and it's really like in your face. I don't know. I can see some parts are kind of wistful and lyrical, but in other parts it gets like really weird and intense at the same time.
All right.
I didn't know that at all.
I'm always curious. Lankbar. One of the things I listened to Lankbar like pretty much nonstop was the soundtrack to the HBO series Rome. just because it's completely instrumental, and it had that weird kind of Mediterranean, but like kind of this really multicultural vibe to it, and like so I just found that perfect. So I'm always interested like what subconsciously influences stuff on that level. But
I think, I mean, I do recall listening to a lot of Carl Sanders in that time period, and just in terms of like that kind of instrumental music and theme, but mostly probably because that was also when I was probably running a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and I was probably listening to that as a consequence of that more so than
Oh, all right. So, do you guys have anything exciting? Like what's coming up with Dying Earth? That is anything in particular that you are, aside from the fact it being done, because I know what that's like. But I hear there might be some new stretch goals in the midst or so, or there maybe we want to have an adventure written by somebody. Is that what I hear?
Yes, we can make a stunning announcement.
Dun dun dun.
Marc, do you want to make a stunning announcement? Or?
No, this is all you, Julian. This is a Keep Crawlin exclusive, flash exclusive.
As I said, I wouldn't be anywhere else except for Keep on Crawling with the Woodward and Bernstein of the RPG world when we drop this bomb. But yeah, we have negotiated. Obviously, the Dark Master came to me in a dream and said, Errol Otis will write a Dying Earth adventure for DCC Dying Earth. And we said, holy, and then there was a lot of non-family friendly, excitement words with asterisks and exclamation points. And yeah, it was a pretty amazing thought. So yeah, he has signed up for that. And yeah, he's going to do a Dying Earth adventure for us.
That's absolutely amazing because from what I understand, Errol has been a fan of Vance's Dying Earth for like a hot minute or two, right? I mean.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny because I was going through a couple days ago through some of his old some stuff he did in the late '70s or whatever, like indie little bootleg D&D things that he did. And he actually dedicates one of them to Jack Vance, the only Appendix N author in the mix, specifically to Jack Vance. And, that famous, the magicians, grabbing at the treasure on the page. I think it's in the basic, maybe in the red book.
It's in the Mulvey basic.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that stuff definitely in his work since, the very beginning. So, this project was made for him. Obviously, he's done some amazing artwork for how many? 3 of our adventures, Marc?
I think 3 of the adventures, and then obviously, he's going to be doing a lot of the interior art as well.
Yeah, just amazing. So, yeah, I mean,
I think it can be announced. It's announced like that's going to be it's going to be the 250K stretch goal, right? Is that
yeah.
So it's one of the adventure that's at the 250K level. So if we reach that level, it'll be available to the Kickstarter backers. I'm sure if we don't reach that level, then it's still going to proceed. It'll just be available, separately. But having it be that the stretch goal is a kind of reward for the backers, an Errol Lewis adventure.
And doing art in the same thing, of course, obviously. Presumably the cover and some of the interior stuff. So
yeah. Well, no, actually, because In Prison of the God Skull was an adventure that I wrote based on basically like Joe said. Errol did a piece of art. I want you to write an adventure around this. So what we're going to be is that Errol's going to write an adventure, and I'm going to do the art for it unless we hit the next stretch goal. And then if we hit the next stretch goal, then I will not do the art for it. So
well, here's a chance for me to say one of my recent slogans, which is "Grandma needs Dying Earth. Grandma really wants DCC Dying Earth. Sign up, Grandma and Grandpa. Sign up your kids. There's no age limit for this Kickstarter." So really great wedding gifts. It's hard to register, but that doesn't mean they don't want DCC Dying Earth. So,
Yeah, and beyond that, we've started putting together a list of ideas for stretch goals after 250K, which is, astounding to me that we're even thinking of that at this point, but more to come, if we get more funding. So.
So yeah, Judge, will the DCC Artists Union allow that? I assume you're referring to me doing the cover of it. No, not at all. That's it. That's like.
It'll be a revolt.
So, yeah. And for those of you who are like, well, okay, well, what kind of adventure can Errol Otis write? Errol has been going to North Texas for many, many years, and I have seen the games that he runs there. Errol Otis can write adventure, trust me. And it's gonna be just as weird as his artwork is. So so, don't have no qualms about like, oh great, we're getting great, we're getting this is not a case where Ringo was writing the song here. Okay, this is what I'm saying here. Like,
no. Come on, she came on like a dream. Come on, beaches and cream. Okay, no, better stop. No, I was fortunate to get in a game that he was running at GaryCon too. GaryCon also this last time around, and yeah, I had a great time. He's a great judge, and I mean, we were obviously just dipping in for 3 or 4 hours into this massive, weird sandbox world thing that he had going. I mean, which itself could have been a Dying Earth thing. I mean, if Vance had a story about that place and that community and the weird stuff they did there, it would just be an uncovered Jack Vance story, honestly. They are simpatico, so yeah.
So, yeah, well, I mean, come to think of it, why don't we have Errol on the show? Why don't we have these guys on the show? We should have got an Errol. That's it.
It's kind of late for him, I don't know. I was kind of wondering it already, but I didn't want to say
it. Speed, what up? Man, I got this dumb crap I got to do. I'll call you.
Oh, well. I mean, I'm so glad that as I was telling you before we went live, since I have been watching from the sidelines, with a mixture of sheer entertainment of just seeing how well the Kickstarter is going for you guys, and not a little bit of laughing up my sleeve about what kind of oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? So yeah, I really hope that the stretch goals get hit. And that we that you don't get burned out meeting them. So
Well, and you know what, and we need to thank you, Mike, for I know that our success, this project's success has been a lot about how great Lankmar was and still continues to be. So when Goodman Games puts that out and puts out the module reprints and expanded editions and all that stuff. I mean, all these great Kickstarter work that they've done, but particularly Lankmar, then that bill, that expands the next one, right? That just, broadens the channel for everything that comes after every time. So, we're knowledgeable that we're traveling a trail that's been blazed to some extent here,
Thank you very much. It's just, it's the running joke that I have is, it's like, yeah, the Purple Planet box set did really good because it came after the Chain Coffin, and put Curtis on the test plane, shoot him up in the sky. If he doesn't crash and burn, we know it's safe for everybody else. So, but yes, thank you very much. And I have to say, the Lankmar Phase 2 is going to come after, and we have X Crawl coming after you guys, so don't mess it up. Well, do you guys have anything else about DCC Dying Earth that you think the folks need to know about?
I think we have a couple of upcoming shows just to get on the Twitch calendar. There's going to be a Dying Earth literary discussion on Saturday. So that'll be one of the things that folks are interested in kind of exploring more kind of the literary aspects from Julian, myself, the Brinkmans, Bob and Jen. We're going to be doing that. We're also going to have an interview with John Vance on Sunday as part of kind of the surrounding media for the Kickstarter, which is really awesome that we get a chance to talk to Jack Vance's son and how, kind of his perceptions of the Dying Earth and, what he's been doing as far as, the work to continue the publications of the stories. And so that's exciting. That's going to be on Sunday. I think it may be recorded. Certainly, both these shorts will be recorded, but you certainly get those. I think the last thing that we're going to cap off, the last couple of things we'll cap off the Dying Earth Kickstarter with is there'll be a trivia show next Thursday. So if you are interested in cash prizes, no cash guaranteed, there will be some trivia show next Thursday, and then a kind of a final countdown show on July 21st, the last day of the Kickstarter, to hopefully nudge us into success, final success for the project.
Okay.
So just some upcoming events.
What is Chun the Unavoidable?
All right, wait a minute. I had a brainstorm. All right, what were the name of the worms that Kugel ends up having, like he powers the ship? Do they have a special name?
They were sailing worms. They were referred to in the book. They when I was playtesting my venture, I had one party that tended to name the worms, so they'd come up with their own like personalizations of them. But no, they're called sailing worms. They're essentially like, and they're one of the monsters that started out in the book, but kind of a fun creature that's unique to that setting.
But you're right. If you tend to them, you are a worminger.
Oh,
yes.
That's right. I do remember there was a right.
A worminger.
So stretch goal for 300,000 plushy sailing worms. That's it. Have your very own plushy sailing worm, or better yet, a pair of them and make fuzzy slippers out of them, and you get a little pole to drive yourself around your apartment. That's what you get.
$1 million. We're sending everyone one iron stone. So.
Oh, man, come on, you guys gotta.
Oh well, I mean, I know it's gonna go absolutely amazing, guys, and it's a rocket ride, so ride it and have fun, because because it's gonna be hard work at some point, but I mean even harder work at this point, but and the good news is hopefully we figured out distribution by now, like we solved that problem. So when it's time to go into the public and actually get there, it won't be so. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you guys on. Brendan, as we wrap things up, we usually mention that each show has a sponsor. Who's sponsoring us this week?
I'm glad you asked, because that just flew out of my brain. My memory. Who's sponsoring us this year, Mike? I'm having a brain fail.
A little thing called the Dying Earth Kickstarter.
Oh, we are doing the Dying Earth Kickstarter. Is that coming up soon? Okay, no, I can't back that up. Yes, so we want to say big thanks to our special sponsor, the Dying Earth Kickstarter. The reason for the season, making it all happen here. Please go out there and support. It's been, you all probably have, but get the word out. It's been, going fantastic so far. I've played a bunch. I've had a lot of fun with it, and thanks so much, guys, for coming on there and representing it, because we're really, it's a very exciting thing happening in Goodman, and you all are, definitely some of the authors of our current, awesomeness. So thank you so much.
Yep. All right, and Brendan and I will be back in 2 weeks. We're taking next week off because we have to. The basement is fully infested, so I gotta bomb it next week, and can't be in it or anything. So we'll see you in 14 days. We'll be back with more Keep Crawlin goodness. And until then, don't go change it.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Good night.
The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out. The geeks come out at night.